education institutions in Africa. For those of you who are new, or for those of you who are old, you might be well aware that the Education Collaboratives, one of Education Collaboratives' focus, or Education Collaborative has a keen interest in the entrepreneurship development as an innovative and problem-solving tool to foster change in higher education in Africa. To achieve this, as we've continuously shared across time, has been working with a network or a group of collaborators to help us explore, share, and implement best practices on how to drive our goals or focal areas within the Education Collaborative at Ashesi University. Now, the Entrepreneurship Community of Practice we see is a working group of educators, experts, and stakeholders who are dedicated to advancing entrepreneurship education across a variety of focal areas, but we would focus very briefly on 4 areas as the Entrepreneurship Community of Practice. We want to focus on active entrepreneurship ecosystems within HEIs, higher education institutions. We want to be able to drive advancements with sound entrepreneurship pedagogy. We want to drive community engagement to spark innovation. But we also want to collaborate through workshops, events, and sessions like this one. So as we kickstart the Entrepreneurship Month, it might be useful for us to also understand what the goals or the objectives of our community of practice will be going forward. We are creating a platform to share knowledge and best practices, and we are doing this collaboratively so that we are able to advance entrepreneurship and the development of it within education. But also, most importantly, we want to be able to share new learnings and practical pedagogical strategies within entrepreneurship education. And also, collaboratively, create or develop joint projects and programs to create new learnings and promote recommendations that would advance entrepreneurship development. Now, to help us launch the Entrepreneurship Month, we have with us Dr. Priya Iyer, who is the Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Finance and Employability at Botho University. She joined Botho University from the corporate world in 2009 and has spearheaded the employability initiatives, including establishing the Entrepreneurship Lab at the university. Priya, as we all lovingly call her, has over 25 years of senior management experience in various organizations where she brings a deep knowledge of the industry's expectations from graduates or from industry who are looking for placement. Priya is a chartered accountant and oversees the Office of Financial Management at Botho University. She has played a significant role in the accounting profession in Botswana through her involvement with the Botswana Institute of Chartered Accountants, where she was the first woman to be elected as the president. She has also been involved with various accounting professional agencies, like at an international level, especially as a committee member for the Professional Accounting Organizations Development Committee of International Federation of Accountants. Priya was appointed as a short-term consultant by the World Bank to assist in the formulation of the rules and regulations of the Accountants and Financial Reporting Acts of Botswana. She joined Botho University. After joining Botho University, she focused on researching around graduate employability, where she completed a Doctor of Education at the University of Liverpool. From this very rich background, Priya is going to talk to us or share insights on highlighting actions for entrepreneurial mindsets, entrepreneurship skills development in higher education institutions. Priya would then I'm going to hand over to Priya very shortly, where she would speak a little bit about this space. And then, as your moderator for today, George Amperchum, the Director of Programs for Education Collaborative, will ask a couple of questions to her, and then everyone else joined here would also be able to chime in so we can have a very fruitful conversation. Priya, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to hand over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, George. And good afternoon, everybody. I can see that this launch is well represented from many parts of our continent, and I can see that people have logged in from Uganda, Botswana, Rwanda, Kenya, Ghana, Ethiopia, Nigeria, just a few, and good afternoon to all of you. And as George says, this is an important milestone for us at the community of practice on entrepreneurship to kick off what is the Entrepreneurship Month. So I will take you through why entrepreneurship is important and sort of take you into the ecosystem that can help build strong entrepreneurship bases within each of our economies.
Just a couple of housekeeping rules. Can you please unmute yourself when you join the call so that we can focus a little bit on Priya? Thank you so much.
Thank you, George. So just to go through, why is entrepreneurship so important to us? Entrepreneurship, to be short, can be considered as a national asset. And the entrepreneurs are the drivers of that asset for any country. It's a dynamic process and it only increases wealth, and also can, in addition to increasing the wealth of the country, can also result in improved well-being of every citizen. African economies are no different, and we need to enhance entrepreneurship in our countries, which can kickstart economies and create the much needed jobs. The African Development Bank had a white paper based on Africa's economy, and they indicate that digitization and emergence of business opportunities linked to greening economies could bring about a more inclusive growth in many of the economies. The World Economic Forum, in their report in August 2022, has reported the success story of African entrepreneurship scenario. It was really heartening to read that we have grown from 0 unicorns in 2015 to 7 or more in 2022, which is really worth mentioning. Further reports have shown that in spite of the world having seen a slump in investment into new startups, Africa showed the highest investment in 2022. And we had a total investment of close to 5 billion, to be precise, $4.85 billion US. Of course, 4 countries took 75% of the investment, which are South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and Egypt. But this shows that there is a growing sense of entrepreneurship within Africa, and we need to really nurture and see how we can grow it from 5 billion to 50 billion, probably. Most of the investments that have been attracted over the past 2 years have been predominantly in the fintech areas, showing how technology-driven innovations are a way of youth-driven entrepreneurship and a way of attracting investment for developing these ideas to become enterprises. This is clearly seen by some of the leading unicorns in Africa. To name a few, Chipper, the unique African partner for Twipper Tips. So what started off as Chipper Cash or PayPal of Africa has now seen a mammoth expansion. Now it incorporates crypto, fractional stocks, payments API, and even comes with a Chipper card. So this just to show how business ideas can be scaled up. InterSwitch is another unicorn, which is a leading African integrated payments and digital platform company. Flutterwave, it expedites international payments for African and global companies such as Facebook and Uber. This is just to show how fintech is playing a big role in enhancing the entrepreneurial landscape in Africa. Another growing area that is seen a lot of opportunities is greening economies. We can see many opportunities being exploited by youth in areas of solar, recycling waste, and many such similar sustainable areas. Social entrepreneurship is another area where there are huge opportunities for youth to make a change in the communities that they live in and also find viable solutions that can be turned into businesses. All corporate organizations have a responsibility to make change in the community around them. And this is where social entrepreneurs will be able to find investors and funders for their proposal. And this is something that we as higher education institutions can expose our students and graduates to. I would like to share a simple solution that was developed in South Africa, which is very interesting because it deals with everyday issues. It was developed by a young group of people to solve a problem that's so common across many parts of the developing world. We'll just watch the video. Thank you, George. And this was just to showcase how everyday issues can become business opportunities for the youth. You might wonder why, when we talk of all these success, is there a real need? What is the need for enhancing the entrepreneurship ecosystem? The World Economic Forum has actually pointed out that as a continent, even though we have now started making ways in attracting investments, we need to go a long way in terms of fostering the entrepreneurship ecosystem and building the resilience into the DNA of entrepreneurs. In order to build this ecosystem, it's very important for stakeholders such as universities, industries, social enterprises, and of course, policymakers to collaborate and provide an enabling. Statistica had illustrated the African entrepreneurship ecosystem in a pictorial form, which shows the interconnectedness between the various players in the ecosystem. And this is where we, as universities and higher education, can play a major role in enhancing the entrepreneurship ecosystem.
All right, thank you so much, Priya. That was, I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I mean, it was very insightful to hear the importance of funding the areas of fintech, as well as some innovations that are happening across the continent with specific focus on what's happening in South Africa with affordable and clean drinking water. Now, when we think about all these areas that you've spoken about, it would be interesting to hear from you what Botho's model, or let's start from here. What is Botho's approach to entrepreneurship then? Because you've talked a lot about these areas, and it will be interesting for us to learn from you how that feeds into Botho's approach to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think for the benefit of those in the audience who don't know us, I'm from Botho University, based in Botswana, and we have campuses, of course, across 5 countries, which is Botswana, Lesotho, Eswatini, Namibia, and now in Ghana. And of course, we are in the distance learning forum as well. So we call it an online campus, just to understand. So I'm based in the Botswana campus currently. So at Botho University, I think the main focus of our entrepreneurship journey is to create that entrepreneurial spirit within the students and the graduates. So what is entrepreneurial spirit? It is a sense, it's to create that drive and creativity in students, and to take small ideas and help them come up and develop them into bigger ideas, and say whether they have the confidence and the resilience to take it forward and build it into businesses. So how do we do this? We have incorporated innovation and entrepreneurship as one of the traits to be achieved as a Botho graduate. So we have what is called a Botho graduate profile, and incorporated into this is innovation and entrepreneurship, which is now resonates with every student who passes through Botho University. Further, we do have an entrepreneurship module, which is incorporated into all the programs that are offered at the university. And so this gives them an insight into what is innovation, what are the ideas that they can come up with, and how do they develop business plans. So that's what the learning outcome of the module comes up with. So it gives, I mean, it's not to develop everybody as an entrepreneur, but we all know that even entrepreneurs make good employees. So I think it achieves both purposes that way. And then we do have pitching competition and an entrepreneurship lab, which mentors the winning ideas out of the pitching competition every year. And of course, we do have we facilitate forums for promotion of goods and services that are provided by our alumni entrepreneurs, through having market days where they can showcase their products and services, and can grow their businesses through those forums. So these are ways in which we try and instill and excite people about becoming an entrepreneur.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I mean, that sounds good. I mean, these are interesting. It's interesting to hear. So you talked a little bit about curriculum, talked a little about some of the activities that happen within Botho to drive, that basically your approach towards entrepreneurship. But I mean, I'm keen to also understand, and after this, I'll probably ask the audience as well, what models is Botho using to instill that spirit of entrepreneurship? So you talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, because basically what we all think about is creating jobs, creating businesses, creating products. You also spoke about entrepreneurship, right? So this is those mindsets that you would have when you take into an organization to help them build. Now, what models are you using? What approach are you using to instill that spirit within your students for entrepreneurship?
I think one of the ways is in that entrepreneurship module that I talked about. What we do is we actually offer an experiential learning to all the undergraduate students, irrespective of what discipline they are studying. And this also gives them an opportunity to actually interact with multidisciplinary students, which is a big plus, because if you have an idea and you talk to somebody from a different discipline, you get a different perspective to it. And that sort of enhances the idea and helps you grow it further. We have a partnership with the Wadhwani Foundation, which is an international foundation offering entrepreneurship education. And we offer opportunities for selected students to go through their programs, which actually gives them access to case study, mentorship, at various stages of the program. We've also done a session with Wadhwani, wherein all the teaching staff have been trained and certified by Wadhwani. So it also gives staff members an opportunity to understand what are the real case studies and how do you deal with real case studies, instead of just becoming just theoretical. So that enhances that spirit. Then, of course, as I mentioned before, we give opportunities and we showcase our entrepreneurial alumni. We support them through entrepreneurship. We have regular entrepreneurship activation sessions with successful entrepreneurs so that we can build in these students the dream of thinking big, and how they can actually get their ideas to think big. So, and we come across a lot of new initiatives, and we just take them on, and with all the risks and unforeseen territories, and we take our students and alumni with us. So this also gives them an opportunity to see and participate in something that they do not do on a regular basis, new openings, new avenues, which gives thoughts to the ideation process, I suppose, George. I think these are the things that we are doing, and it'll be really interesting to see and hear from others what they do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Priya. Actually, that actually takes us to a question that I'm going to pose to the audience as well. And thank you all for joining. If you haven't already, you can let us know where you're joining us from in the chat box. But I guess the same question goes out to our audience, right? We've talked a little bit about Botho University's approach to entrepreneurship, and I guess it's open to everybody. What other approaches are we using as higher education institutions within Sub-Saharan Africa towards entrepreneurship? But also, when you think about your approach, you can also highlight what models you're using to instill that spirit of entrepreneurship. I think it'll be great for us to hear from the audience so we can have a deeper dialogue. So open it up to the audience. Raise your hands if you want to talk, and you can unmute yourself and go ahead. All right, we have a couple of people who have raised their hands, and I'm just going to call. Oh, we have Dr. Bankole. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Priya, for that wonderful exposition. I think I will start first with what we do at Pan-Atlantic University in Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria. Fairly similar. We have entrepreneurship taught as a compulsory course throughout the university. So once it is taught, you have to start a business on campus. And then after the second year, if you choose to continue, we give you the opportunity to. Like you said, not everybody will be entrepreneur. So as a result, we don't force it. But people see that some are thriving. So they latch on and then they go up. And then at the end of the fourth year, during their graduation, we actually give a prize to the student entrepreneurial of the year or something like that. So that's given on behalf of the first Vice-Chancellor of the university. Beyond that, the Center for Entrepreneurship Development at the university focus, I would say 25% spreading the gospel of entrepreneurship, the spirit, creating and all of that within the university. But outside the university, I would say 75% of the effort are also being spent outside. So it's not only the community within the university that knows and understands that agenda, but we are then able to connect with the government around policies. In fact, just last year, we were able to review the entrepreneurship curriculum under the auspices of the regulator, which is the Nigerian University Commission, the National University Commission. So then we do a lot of work with government, both at the state and the federal level. And so the whole idea is for them to see that there are not enough jobs in the country, and entrepreneurship is a way in which we can solve the issue of job creation. And so we attack it from both sides, both within, which is the university itself, and then outside the university, which is the society at large. But more importantly, we also try to bring together all the directors of entrepreneurship centers, and then we do precisely what we're doing here, trying to learn from one another so that we can share best practices. And it is not just a lone tree trying to make a change. It's everybody's problem, and we all have to solve it together. So that's the model that we operate, but we try to go beyond the university itself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bankole. I mean, I've heard a couple of very interesting things that potentially align, especially with what Priya you shared. You talked a little bit about partnerships, and we heard Dr. Banki also talk a little bit about partnerships and collaboration internally, but also most importantly, externally, similar to what you're doing with the Badvani Foundation. We have Peter Ocheng, who has his hands raised as well. Please go ahead and share.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening now in Uganda. I'm Peter Ocheng from Uganda Matters University in Uganda. We are moving almost in the same way that I've had description from the two colleagues. Realizing that the rate of unemployment in Uganda is very high. The university felt that the students that are leaving the university after completing their studies should not go outside there and be completely job seekers, but we should instill in them opportunity to become job creators. We have what we call STEP. STEP is a student's training and entrepreneurship practice. We have introduced now entrepreneurship to be taught in all disciplines. As already stated, we know that whoever you become, whatever you become, you're a medical doctor, you're an engineer, you are in social sciences, one time you should be able to create job outside there. So we work hand in hand, not directly with the government, but yes, with the government. But we have a body called Private Sector Foundation that deals with the private sector operators in different businesses. So hand in hand, we work with them. In STEP, what we do in the first years, we have the theory. And then when you are now completing in the third year, you come up with business ideas. And then you produce a product that you will have something like demonstration, okay, to the whole university. And of course, the best winners are encouraged, okay, and then they are also planning to, we plan to award them certificates that they could be recognized with outside there. But the most important thing is we always invite successful entrepreneurs outside there to come and talk, so that whatever they hear in theory in class is echoed by those who are already on the ground. And a few of the things that they hear from there is what probably will impact on them when they decide to become practitioners outside there. The university also has a very strong policy of extending this thing to the community. We have what we call the community outreach, where whatever we've learned, though not practicing, we go outside there and talk to the small business owners and explain to them how to manage their business and become successful and better entrepreneurs of tomorrow. Currently, it is moving on, and we have managed to help many small businesses around the universities and out, because our university has branches all over the country. And it is helping many of these small entrepreneurs to become successful. And in this, we believe that the same students who are doing this to the community will one day become one and even do better than that. That is currently what we are doing at Uganda Matters University in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter, for sharing that with us. Do we have any other contributions also from the group, from the chats as well?
Yeah, George, I just noticed somebody who had put on the chat. I'm just going back to the chats because it's, yeah, it says, what's your view on having an entrepreneurial dimension in all course units instead of having a particular course unit on entrepreneurship as such? I mean, if I may just respond, I think we just heard from the two presenters, as well as what we do at Botho University. I think entrepreneurship is not as a standalone, it's actually incorporated into the programs. And I think that will work because it is now trying to develop the entrepreneurial mindset within your own discipline of what your study is. And I think that will be much better than it being on its own, because once you have developed a business, there's always opportunity and you can take that additional effort in studying about entrepreneurship. That'll be my take. I do think I see a hand from Sena, George.
Sena, please go ahead.
Thanks, George. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sena Agbujam with Ashesi University. So I just wanted to contribute to this particular question that was asked about whether entrepreneurship should be a standalone or if it should be integrated. And agreeing with Priya that, you know, a blend of both helps. So there are typically would say when it comes to entrepreneurship education, that is a teaching of entrepreneurship. You can do it through 3 ways, either teaching for entrepreneurship, which is very experiential. And so you have students actually practicing different aspects of the startup process to gain the skill of actually starting. And then you could teach and in there as well, you could use like, well, teaching through entrepreneurship could be the use of like cases, where you're using entrepreneurship cases to teach. It could be an internship where someone actually spends time in a startup institution, because an internship in a startup institution is very different from an internship in like a matured institution, because you learn different things. So if someone wants to be an entrepreneur, it's great if they intern in a startup institution, because then it helps them to understudy and learn some of these basics. And then you could teach about entrepreneurship as well, which is basically learning, you know, what is entrepreneurship, like defining entrepreneurship and finding like the role of entrepreneurship in building an economy, in society, etc. So by engaging these 3 different approaches to entrepreneurship education, then we are able to sort of leverage and optimize what entrepreneurship brings to the table. Now, this should be coupled with a structure or a system, what we would call an ecosystem, that gets students to interface between, you know, curriculum and co-curricular, etc. activities within the institution, so that they are practicing not only in the classroom, because teaching for entrepreneurship is courses, taught courses that are teaching for entrepreneurship, but there's also the whole bouquet of, you know, non-course related extracurricular and co-curricular activities that can be plugged in. And then there's even the research and innovation component, right? So some courses are, you know, a little technical. They'll come up with products and solutions for problems within the society, etc. And it's great if we are able to help them figure out the commercialization component, which will go through, you know, helping them to figure out how to develop business models for these solutions that they've come up with and how to take them to the market, or even if it is registering the patent and selling to an institution, how to go through all of that, so that it becomes this very beautiful big buckets or baskets of different activities that promote entrepreneurship. And in the end, when a student interfaces with these at different points, they could become entrepreneurial, where they are actually starting their business, or they could become intrapreneurial, where they pick up the skills and the competencies, and then these show up in the workplace, because then you see that it's a different kind of employee, because then they bring on these competencies that helps the institution. So a very long contribution, but just wanted to add to the, you know, bringing it all together. So it's not one or the other, but, you know, bringing it all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sena. Thank you for that contribution. I think it does tie in with a lot of thoughts that have been shared as well. And I see another hand from George.
Yes, but before we go to George, we have a question in the chat box. So George, I will come to you very shortly, but I'll just throw this question at Priya. It says, when we teach entrepreneurship, do we expect students to go and start their own jobs after their graduation, or working in different organizations as experts? If we are training them to start their own business, what is your comment on the lack of human resource scarcity if we have like 1,000 startups in a single country? How do we make sure that there is a balance? And I guess, Priya, this goes to you, but also opened up to the rest of the audience as well. If you have any thoughts you want to share, you can leave them in the chat box, but go ahead, Priya.
That's a very, very interesting and loaded question. I'm sure you can say that, George. I mean, we know there are scarcity of skills, and as we train, I mean, there is the report that's come about, which has really shown the future of jobs, which is really what we are training today is not the job that's going to be there when the student graduates through our system. So we are definitely dealing with some of those. And when we now say we are training everybody on entrepreneurship, I don't think it is expected that everybody will go out there and start a business. I'm not saying, I mean, it's nice, and we really want to have more and more of our students and graduates starting businesses. But we all know that, you know, becoming an entrepreneur is not everybody's cup of tea. There are still people, and just as now Sena said, just teaching them entrepreneurship can make them good employees because they are now thinking like entrepreneurs. So there are many people who've got ideas, but you know, to become an entrepreneur, you need that resilience and that risk taking. And we find that that is where they lack in terms of going into and starting their own businesses. So when they join the other startups or other companies, there will be people who will still not take to entrepreneurship, even if they have studied, they have been the best student in their entrepreneurship module. You might find them looking for a job because of that risk element that they need to take. And that will be the workforce that you will have for all these startups.
Thank you so much, Priya. We actually have EntCoP, who's eager to also chime in here. So EntCoP, please go ahead and unmute yourself. And
all right, thank you very much, George, and thank you, Priya. So I was just going to say that I'm going to piggyback on what Priya was talking about. The fact that, yes, we're teaching entrepreneurship. We do not want them to all set up businesses, but what we want is the fact that their mindset shifts. And once the mindset shifts, that's when the transformation starts. So talking about lack of human resources, the very way that young Africans are leaving the continent and going out and going into diaspora to work is what will happen when we have a lot of our youth going through these entrepreneurship modules, having their mindsets changed and beginning to see their purpose in transforming Africa. So yes, we keep talking about entrepreneurship and business, starting businesses, but the minute that your mindset shifts and changes, whether you're working as an employee, whether you're working as a co-founder or as a founder, what happens is that you become a magnet for change, and you are able to influence other young people to see things differently, to start to see possibilities where impossibilities exist. So the challenge that we're looking at, lack of human resources, I don't think that we have a lack of human resources. I think what it is that we have a lot of young people who don't have a purpose, who haven't found their purpose, and who need to have their mindset shifted or changed. And that's the power of an entrepreneurship module or course. Just thought to add that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, EntCoP. George, we are coming back to you. So if you still have your question, please go ahead and ask.
Oh, thank you, George, and thank you, Priya and Sana. Wonderful presentation. Listening to the beautiful work that is already being done, and even the focus that is being put towards entrepreneurship. And what I end up is the importance, as I think Priya mentioned, that the importance is on the mindset change, which actually I agree. Now, for me, one of the things that I've always been struggling with is, at the end, we have already kind of realized, as Sena was putting it, we can have a blended system where, like Sana put it, is teaching for, teaching about, and teaching through entrepreneurship. For me, I ask myself, and this is what maybe I may, I hope to get maybe some of the answers based on the best practices across. How do we measure while we are here? What I want is, okay, I have this ecosystem already working, let's say here at Kepler, where we are trying to develop that ecosystem. And then I said to myself, I have students that may go into the entrepreneurship track, and those that, of course, will take them through, they will understand the importance of entrepreneurship. How do I know in totality, even those who do not go, let's say, to develop products, where I can actually say the, you know, the products or services or solutions that may come out, they may come out with, that could be an indicator for me to say, okay, I've succeeded here. What about those that who do not actually go through that, and then they go elsewhere? How do I really say that I've impacted this person in terms of the mindset change? And is there a way to track that data? And if there's that kind of an experience amongst ourselves, if we could hear how, you know, the process took place, that would be quite wonderful. Thank you.
Right, Priya?
I think, George, you want to put me on the spot. Well, how do you measure mindset change is a difficult question, I think, to answer. But I suppose we all measure it by the success stories that we will have at the end. And as I think, as a university or as a higher education institution, we're not just looking at creating entrepreneurs. I mean, and when we say, talking about entrepreneurial mindset, we've just defined it, and it is creating that person who's got an idea, who can, take those risks and start the business. And it's not everybody, but in understanding and changing that mindset, maybe, I mean, even when they become employers, they are going to be good. So for us, when we say a success story and what is a measure of success, it could even be, we all do tracer studies of our graduates, and what is it? So if they have been meaningfully engaged at the end of their graduation period, I suppose that is success for us. So be it entrepreneurs, or be it employment, as long as they have found a way in which, and that's what they come to us for, their transformation of their lifestyle. And if we have achieved that, I think we've achieved it through various ways, because I do not think we can directly measure mindset change as such. I hope I've answered you, George.
Yeah, thank you, Priya. Thank you, Priya.
Yes, Charles Kodiambo, you've had your hand raised for quite a bit. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
I'm Charles Odiambo. Yes, I'm Charles Odiambo from University in Kenya. I have great interest in entrepreneurship. So my question first, most young people of my age, to be specific, you find that we want to venture into entrepreneurship and try to create a robust and active economy that is creating problems in our country and Africa at large, problems related to hunger, diseases, and malnutrition. But now there is dominance in the markets. There are those who have been to the market, they have been into the entrepreneur, and the kind of the competition that they give to young persons, the students and the graduates who are trying to get into the markets and practice entrepreneurship, you find that they are giving a stiff competition that is hard to counter, and therefore we get demoralized at the long run. Then we give up. So how do we counter this competition from these individuals who have been to the market? They know the code and the rules. And then number two, just as I heard from my friend from Uganda, you find that young persons, sometimes we have a lot of ideas. Like personally, I have an idea that could be a pivotal panacea in the agricultural menace that we've had in our country, but now putting it into practicability in terms of incubation and support from donors and those of goodwill, find that such ideas are perishing just within the locality, because there is nobody who is coming up to nurture these ideas and put them into practicability, so that they help in creating job at the same time in solving the problems that we have in Africa, so that we have food security, we have a robust economy of young, energetic persons who have the passion, and we deal with the issue of hunger once and for all. Thank you. I yield back the floor.
Thank you so much, Charles. Priya, if you're happy to chime in, please go ahead. But because we had EntCoP, Dr. Bankole, and Senna also shared their thoughts along with Peter Ocheng, please go ahead and also chime in if you want to.
But I do see there are two more hands. Is it in response to that?
So we have Anthony and Elisa and Peter Ocheng. Are these questions that you have, or you want to? Yes, so now go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So just on the issue, the issue of the measurement bit, actually. So you know, in the education collaborative entrepreneurship ecosystem development project that we are working on, that has had us have conversation with quite a number of institutions on the continent to figure out, you know, what they are doing and how they are doing it. And one of the areas that I find that a lot of us, including HEIs, hasn't done a very good job at. So we've done something, but it's not a very good job at, is actually the measurement component. We have been very excited, in some cases anxious to get going, because we don't want to be left behind, right? Because there's so much talk about entrepreneurship. It's the next big thing. It's a big thing right now. It's, you know, it's what's going on. We're excited about it and we are doing it. But how are we measuring? And one of the key things that I think is absolutely essential for us to do as actors in the space is to take that step back and very clearly state, you know, where are we heading towards? As Ashesi University, as Botho University, as Pan-Atlantic University, where are you taking your entrepreneurship ecosystem? What are the things that you are aspiring towards? Now, mine, Ashesi's might be different, Botho's might be different, but then we are all guided by the contribution we want to make and the outcomes that we want to see in our students as well. So my recommendation on that one would be that, you know, we fall back on monitoring, evaluation, and learning pieces, right? So that once you have an entrepreneurship ecosystem in your space, let's be very intentional about, even in conceptualizing how this ecosystem is going to look like, conceptualizing, you know, what theory of change are we driving? Where are we getting to? What are our aspirations, and how can we actually journey towards them? It will help all of us to be a bit more focused in the things that we are rolling out. It will help us not to just, Botho is doing this and they look like they are like really enjoying doing it. Okay, let me start as well because I have a few things that can help me do it. And I can't be Botho. Botho can't be Ashesi, but we can each walk our path and work very significantly. So I will say that it's important for us to step back and look into the MEL. And the learning component is very important because we are not writing. We are not like talking to institutions. So many institutions are doing so many amazing things. But going online to search for what's happening in the space on the continent, we couldn't find much. It wasn't until we started talking to people. And so if we are doing all of these great things and we have all of these great learnings to share, then we should be intentional also about, some would say, the scholarship of teaching and learning, so that we are capturing the learnings and the scholarship from the practice that we have so that we can share these as well, right? And then with our very clear indicators, we'll be able to measure. Someone asked the question, do you count the businesses that fail, right? Is your focus on businesses that thrive and the fact that you want to count a number of businesses that are coming out of your institution, or it's a mindset change for you? If it's a mindset change for you, then the fact that the student has gone through it and has failed and has even learned how to fail, because not everyone knows how to fail, has learned how to fail and still keep a smile on their face is enough, right? So what do you want to achieve? And what does success mean to you? What are your aspirations? I guess that is where we have to take the MEL conversation. And maybe one of the conversations at community of practice meetings should be on, MEL, and really delve into how can we measure, how can we evaluate, and how can we even document our learnings such that we can all benefit from all of us, right? Thank you, George, and thanks, Priya.
Thank you, Senna. Just to add on to, just going back to Charles's question, I see there was a chat about the resilience of youth. And I also wonder, because to me, he touched on a good point about, solving hunger in your communities. It is a social entrepreneurship if you look at it. And we are talking, that was the example that has been quoted as one of the opportunities for youth to go in. And as higher education institution, just to give an example of what we do at Botho, not solving hunger as such, but we have a program whereby it's called challenge-driven education. And our students are exposed to problems within communities. So they go in there and they are exposed to these problems which now they need to work in their teams to find a solution to. And it's these solutions, and now we're working to see how do you commercialize the solution. And like Senna said, you have an idea, you have this, and how do you now commercialize into the, so the opportunity, like Charles said, you go into the communities, you have this, then you come up with an idea as a group. There are now corporates who are, through these ESG initiatives and things like that, who really want to work on sustainability measures and sustainable solutions. So you could tap into them for the funding, for fundraising, and through that, work out a business that is viable to the group that comes up with a solution, which is commercialization, as well as solving a social problem. So I think these are things that can work towards enhancing such initiatives from the youth. Just my thought on it, George. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priya. Very, very insightful on how we can drive for practical solutions. We have Elisa, who had his hand raised for quite a bit. Elisa, please.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Elisha Clever, Business Management and Entrepreneurship pursuer at Davis College. But I'm really passionate about sustainable heritage preservation. So hence, I'd like to ask why, the entrepreneurship journey and the change agents are somehow aligned. But mostly when you engage at such social enterprise, most of the time we used to meet up some circumstance regards to the raising the funds. Someone has mentioned the feasibility, applicability of the business. Because you see, mostly the social enterprise are making indirect profit. Hence, when you're trying to seek whether you can get investment, when you can get a fund, you see, to raise up, sometimes it becomes a problem. And also, I'd like to have your insight on how the entrepreneurship student who come up with such solid solution for the community, because we do mostly trying to iterate what others have done. But when we approach those issues that our community are facing, sometimes we facing various problems, maybe from the policies, because sometimes you found that the government have even ever set out such policies to solve the problem, but also when it comes to how to raise up the funds, you found that the investors are not really interested in such kind of social enterprise, which making indirect profit. So it could be better to have your insight on how we can building a business model which is generating income rather than, belonging to that fund. So I'd like to have your insight on how we can create such business model that generating income, even though it is a social enterprise, but not belonging to that funds. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be a part of this thoughtful conversation.
Yeah.
Well, that's a tough one. I mean, generating funds, of course, I mean, there are policy, and I think, which is also one of the reasons, Elisa, I mean, I know Dr. Obama, he's alluded to the fact that how they do many things within the institution and how they do many things outside with government, lobby bodies. So I think that is where the ecosystem plays a big role in terms of how it is that because I don't think individually any of us can achieve everything. So we do need to have that ecosystem, the entrepreneurs, from the idea generation to where they take it into businesses. It's, they have to travel that journey, and there has to be many players who have to play a part. Elisa, right, like you said, we do need government to have favorable policies which can help with these initiatives that you come up with. There has to be funding agencies which are willing to fund. Of course, there are, in various places, there are various challenges. For instance, in Botswana, we never had the concept of angel investment till about, I think, 4 years back. And it is by seeing what young entrepreneurs were going through. It's through many of us who were involved. Some of the directors from Botho and some of the other young entrepreneurs within Botswana who got together to form the Angel Network. So which really provides an opportunity for the youngsters, for the young businesses, not just to get funds, to be mentored into bigger businesses where they can access funding. So, it sort of created another extra layer to that ecosystem. So I think it is a lot of hard work, Elias. It's not very easy to find a quick answer for you. So I'm sorry about the roundabout answer, but that's the way we can do it. Have collaboration. And I think through networks like ours, I'm sure we can really make that changes, learn from each other, lobby bigger bodies, because we then become a force as a collaborative.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Priya. Mr. Kwabena Yeboah, I've seen you've also had your hand raised for quite a bit. Please go ahead.
All right, George, thank you very much for the opportunity. My name, like you said, is Kwabena Yeboah, and I'm alumnus of University of Ghana, and I'm an entrepreneur now. Okay, so you would agree with me that entrepreneurship stems from the necessity to solve problems in society. But here lies the case that a young man tries to, find solution to problems in society through entrepreneurship. Then you get people who are importers of almost everything that we can produce here. Let's take Ghana, for instance. Ghana imports almost everything, even things that we can produce here. And you realize that when a young guy comes up with, an entrepreneurial idea to, provide something like an import substitution, you would find these importers who, have the government in their pockets, run your business down, and, you end up, they end up collapsing your business. How do we work with governments to, ensure that young people who are trying to help with import substitution, are able to thrive and get away from the claws of these importers in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Governor. Priya? Those.
I don't have an answer for that. I'll just throw it open to everybody. I don't want to comment on it.
All right, no problem at all.
George, can you paraphrase that? Can you paraphrase the question?
Okay, I'll just call on Governor to re-ask it again, which is might be from him. So
okay,
Governor,
let me come again. So I'm saying that when a young man or a budding entrepreneur tries to solve problems in society by producing things that we can consume here and produce here, you realize that people who import stuff into the country, importers of rice, sugar, toiletries and what have you, they end up running the business down through the government. They have the government in their pocket because they finance their campaigns and what have you. So in order not to run their import business down, they run your business down so that you will not be able to, be some sort of an import substitution business in the economy. How do we, work with government to ensure that young people who are trying to, help in that regard are not bullied in the economy?
I could start the conversation on this one. I don't have an answer, but I will start the conversation. Ineka has a point as well, but I'm just so definitely it's not just the responsibility of higher educational institutions to make entrepreneurship happen and thrive. So one of the models of entrepreneurship ecosystems beyond the higher education institution that I like to look at. So I have two that sort of might relate to this. One is the model proposed by Eisenberg. The second one would be like the three blocks, the triple helix that has become the quadruple helix. Yeah. But basically, if you look at all of these models, you realize that it is a combination of factors and stakeholders and institutions that make the ecosystem thrive. And for us to be able to thrive, and us, I mean entrepreneurs, trainers of entrepreneurs, educators, etc., to be able to thrive, we need government on our side. And I typically would say that the role of government in all of this is creating an enabling environment. Some governments in some countries will get into the business of supporting training directly, maybe have some entrepreneurship support service, ESOs, organizations, ESOs in the space that are directly training entrepreneurs. But ultimately, it is creating the micro, macro economic environment that actually accommodates and welcomes entrepreneurs. And so if a particular country doesn't have a government that is looking at it this way and realizes the need to empower its own people to produce enough for consumption and even export in some areas, not all areas, but some basics, and promote production, promotes value addition, promotes manufacturing, etc., within the country, then of course that enabling environment is not available. It's not available to them. The Continental Free Trade Agreement perhaps might introduce an avenue for us to leverage, but even that, you need to be a player at a certain level to be able to leverage that, because then now you are looking at moving goods out of your country. I remember having a conversation with this organization that we're writing a case study on, and this is a Ghanaian-owned 80-year business. It's called Nkuleno, and they are in the space of making food. And we were talking about their palm base. And they mentioned that, they tried exporting their palm base to Nigeria, and the logistics and the cost of getting the palm base to next door Nigeria was more expensive than getting it to South Africa, was more expensive than getting it to London, was even more expensive than getting it to the US. And so they had to cancel their Nigeria practice and then look at these other markets as well, because it's produce. Another company that I've been interacting with also, they are a younger startup, maybe less than 10 years, Tractor, and they provide tractor services. And they actually have business in Nigeria and some countries in East Africa. It's easier because it's a service company, right? And so they go in and then they leverage the resources on ground and then they provide the service. So yes, we are limited, and I don't want to mention any particular country and mention, because then I'll start blurting out my frustration. So I'm not going to go into that space, but I guess if your country's structures are not very supportive, then we can look beyond our countries and take advantage of educational institutions, of other ESOs in the systems, accelerators extra in the system, that can support you as a young entrepreneur, an older entrepreneur, but as an entrepreneur, support you to build your business to a point where you can leverage other opportunities that are available to you, right? So that would be my long-winded response. Yeah.
So
Ineka's hand is up. I don't know. I think Ineka wants to.
Yeah, Ineka, please unmute yourself to chime in. And Matthew, we'll come back to you right after Ineka.
All right, thank you very much. So my name is Neko Kekaro, Enterprise Development Center, Panatlantic University, Nigeria. So I wanted to just chime in a little bit because in listening to him ask that question, it made me reflect on the challenges some of our young entrepreneurs in Nigeria have. And the fact of the matter is this: we need to accept the fact that there are some issues that are systemic and we cannot change, we cannot beat. So in even the teaching of entrepreneurship is part of what we make our young people understand, that when we talk about a gap analysis, when we talk about spotting an opportunity, it goes beyond being able to sell that product, that service. That's where the aspect of SWOT analysis comes in, and we start to look at threats. You need to talk to them about making sure that they've done a proper 360 degrees to know about the cartels that exist. In my country, we've had a lot of businesses that have started and they have crumbled just because they thought that they could go against the establishment. It's a bit difficult to do that. So what we always recommend is that if you're interested in food, okay, you don't have to be an importer. And that's where the value chain analysis comes into play and the exposition of opportunities that abound in that particular value chain. So you don't have to import the food. You can actually do something else. So you could go into processing. You could go into actually having a restaurant. But until they understand that there's some things that at the level that they're at, a little bit beyond them, they haven't started. That's one. Then two, the second thing about funding, and we keep having that conversation about funding. I'm a third generation entrepreneur. My grandparents started a factory that my parents ran, and my siblings and I are running. So I wear multiple caps, and I can talk about that. I think in the last 15 years, I have seen more funding available for young entrepreneurs than ever before. There are all sorts of grants, all sorts of competitions available, and a lot of the developmental organizations, they have all sorts of programs and projects that have grants, grant aids, single-digit loans attached. But for us as HEIs, what we can do practically is to start to look at our ecosystem, is to start to look at our alumni base and see about creating a purse or a pot of money, as you might call it, that becomes available to young entrepreneurs that are worthy to have access to that funding. So, and when I say funding, it doesn't have to be a grant. It could be a grant aid whereby they pay something back, but not everything. And it's a conversation, I think, at the Education Collaborative, we can start to flesh out and see what comes out of that. But for anybody that is interested, the Tony Remelu Foundation, they have a continent-wide competition that gives funding. A lot of the developmental banks have funding. But for something more sustainable, let's go back and build something with our alumni and our ecosystem.
Thank you so much. That was very insightful. Great add-on to this. So we'll take Matthew and then Peter's questions or comments, and then we'll move on to our final question for Priya and the rest of the team, rest of the attendees, and then potentially find some time to close. Go ahead. All right, Matthew, you're muted, so you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now? All right. Okay, so hi, I'm Matthew. I'm Matthew Powell. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a founder for Prime Occupational Health and Safety. So my business has been in motion for 5 years, and I can tell from being a millennial, the actual, let's say, the current state of entrepreneurship when it comes to, let's say, Ghana, right? Because I'm from Ghana. And what I want to say is, first of all, I wanted to answer the question about countries with poor infrastructure when it comes to entrepreneurship. One thing I've noticed is a lot of companies in Ghana or Africa don't really care about online presence. So sometimes a lot of organizations, the international organizations that understand how to grow these young companies would love to see your online presence. So even if your country is having a poor infrastructure, there will be someone out there, there will be someone in Germany, someone in America, that if your online presence has, if you have a domain, if you have a business domain, if you have certain things in place that can be taught that can help you out to get your business out there. That's the same way I got access to certain organizations that help my company. So, I'm just giving out the answer about countries with poor infrastructure. I think someone asked something about that. I'm just giving out how I got access, even though Ghana has poor infrastructure when it comes to entrepreneurship. Right, I still got access because I created my domain. I did whatever I had to do to have a strong online presence to also, get to other people that might help me out. And also another thing I wanted to talk about was measuring success. I don't know how we will measure entrepreneurship, like how successful a company can be, because entrepreneurship comes with generational changes. We cannot talk about, let's say, Mark Zuckerberg's idea in Carnegie's time or Rockefeller's time. Carnegie's time is way off before, Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook. You cannot talk about Facebook when we're talking about Rockefeller. It's different. There are different generations. So if you're going to measure Mark Zuckerberg in Carnegie's time, telling him that he won't be successful during that time, he was successful after a number of generations. So how would you look at someone's idea and say, this will not work, or this will work, or that will work? Because entrepreneurship in itself is allowing someone to think outside the box. It's allowing someone you will never know where someone will actually generate something or get an idea from to actually spring it up. And it comes to the resilience and how you have your own determination to keep going. A lot of companies die after 2 years or 3 years. But if you have the determination to keep going, whatever that you have in mind, you can actually make it happen. I understand that I think Madam Priya was actually talking about how entrepreneurship is not for everyone, right? And she kept stating that entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. Yes, that's true. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. But how would we not kill dreams by measuring them, by actually just inspiring them that, hey, you can, just inspire, is the words, measuring can actually kill a dream. You can measure someone's dream, and then that wouldn't be the time that you think, who are you to measure someone's idea? For me, I don't think that's a right thing or a right statement to say that you can measure an idea, because that was what I was also trying to say, that there are no guidelines when it comes to entrepreneurship from what I know from, and also Madam Priya also made something about social innovations, making mention of ESGs and all of these social interventions that comes into play. A lot of these funding or grants out there are socially, I mean, the augmentation of fund sources are directed to social innovations. So I would say a lot of people maybe start up businesses without any, I mean, sorry to say, someone might start a business and be like, okay, I'm exporting food. I'm sending, let's say, yam to the US or whatever it is, without any standards, without any food standards. If you're starting a business with exporting food, you need a food standard, right? But all of these come into play with the environment, social, and government, and governance, where if you don't have all of these standards in place and having ESGs and all of these social innovations in place, you will never, get these funding organizations to help you out, because most of these funding are now towards social innovation. So I 100%, I agree with Madam Priya about talking about the social innovations. 100%, that's true. So I would urge all entrepreneurs to, put people in the center of their businesses. When starting up something, you need to make sure it affects people. It shouldn't be away from people, but you need to put people in the center when you are trying to build a business. And also, one last thing that I would like to say was, I think it was about the quadruple helix that I think Senna made mention of the quadruple helix, about the higher educational institutions collaborating with the government and the private sector and the society. So all of these come into play, but how are we setting in, I don't know how to put it. How are we making ourselves visible that, okay, entrepreneurship needs to cut across all of these spheres or these bubbles over here, because every single time it changes. The business market is always a changing space. It never stays the same. So I think it is quite difficult trying to collaborate with this one and that one if they are all not one and thinking all the same. It will be, there is a form of difficulty. So let's not think that all this that we're talking about is an easy road that we can just talk and tomorrow leave it. And then, there needs to be certain actions. There needs to be some action plans. There needs to be some schedules. How are we putting all of these in place, making sure that we are creating change, like we are touching lives. We are actually doing something for the entrepreneurship group, basically. So I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matthew. I just want to say, I know you talked about measuring success. I know it's not about measuring any idea. And I think that's the biggest role that higher education institutions and universities play in nurturing the dream. So it's not really measuring the idea, it's basically nurturing the idea. So when they are students within the comfort of a university, they can come up with an idea which can actually, there are mentors, there are other people within the system, we connect them who can help, is this a viable project? We are not questioning their idea, but telling them, okay, in order for this, you have to develop this business plan, you find attraction, you take them to investors. So I think universities and higher education institutions really provide that safe haven, if you may say, for these budding ideas. So I think having that sense of entrepreneurship and promoting that gives the students that comfort that they can come up with the wildest dream. And it's not going to be shot down, but, through, you definitely know that some are successful quick, some have quick wins, some take time, some don't. We also project make it a point. I know we talked about failures at some of the earlier conversations. We have a session wherein we bring in now successful entrepreneurs, but who talk about their failures, so that every entrepreneur, everybody who has an idea also goes through to say that failure is not just me. Everybody has failed in this game before they've gotten to where they are. So I think that's also a reiteration of the nurturing mentality that universities can provide. Thank you, Matthew. And I agree that, you need that ecosystem. And I think this is the first of the conversations that we are having as community of practice for entrepreneurship. And it's to build this collaboration, right across the continent, wherein we can all share these best practices, our pains, our gains, you share in that, and then we take lessons from that, which can be used by everybody. I mean, there is no one fix-it rule. So we are all trying to find out what works for some people, what doesn't work for some people. But thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you so much for adding to that. That's actually a beautiful segue into the next question. But I'm wondering, because we've left Peter's hand up for quite a while, I'm wondering if Peter, you can unmute yourself and share your comment or ask your question.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Priya, and thank you all participants. I am Peter Kedai, a lecturer at the Management University of Africa in Kenya. And in Kenya, we actually teach entrepreneurship related units in all institutions, starting from primary, secondary, tertiary, and even universities. We have entrepreneurship related courses all through. Now, this forum that you have come up with is actually the way to go. It's very, very important. We have just started opening the doors to the world in what we call stimulation phase in entrepreneurship. As much as not all persons will be ready, will be willing, will be able to join entrepreneurship, they need to be told, they need to be motivated, they need to be stimulated to know what entrepreneurship is and to know advantages of entrepreneurship to them and even to their country. So actually, what you have done is very, very commendable. In Kenya, and specifically in the Management University of Africa, we are doing that, and we have gone a step further. After stimulating the students, after stimulating our community, we have gone ahead to identify those who accept the challenge, those who have come up with a business idea, those who have come up with something which is workable. And we have set up what we call an incubation center. And this is to nurture. It's a step after stimulation phase, a step towards supporting those who have the idea and those who are ready to take up entrepreneurship as a career. In the business incubation, that is where we actually support them. That is where we tell them how to register. We tell them how to source for funds. We tell them how to do what we call marketing research, etc. And then, of course, after that one, we shall go to the third phase, which is mainly business sustenance. But that one we have not reached. And I think this is where this collaboration, the African collaboration, comes handy, because actually these entrepreneurs, when they start businesses, they will need funding. And as an institution, we may not provide the fund. It requires a bigger community, a bigger setup to help them come up with the funds. Actually, research has it that most of the businesses started, the small businesses, when they are started, majority of them, over 70%, do not live to enjoy their third birthday. And the main reason is the lack of fund and the lack of support. I think one of the previous speakers said these entrepreneurs, they start and they face a lot of competition from big businesses, from politicians who want to import things from outside. And they come such that our entrepreneurs, our small enterprises are not able to reach the market, to sell the goods to the market, because the bigger brothers are already there, and they have put a very severe competition so that the young ones are not able to move forward. One of the pillars in the ecosystem is actually coming up with a supporting group. Those young entrepreneurs, if they can join hands and they have an organization, this organization can fight for them, can lobby for them to get what they need to get in their governments. And even if it means even going outside the government, I think such an organization will do marvelous in helping the upcoming entrepreneurs, in helping them to compete, to enhance business, to do what we call consultancy, so that these young entrepreneurs can actually move forward and compete favorably with the others. Otherwise, thank you so much. I appreciate this organization. I think it's the way to go, but let it not stay there. At least this is the stimulation phase. All entrepreneurs would be, or even prospective entrepreneurs, they need to know, to hear the gospel. But after that, those who take up the challenge, we need to nurture them, we need to help them, and then after that, we see how we can sustain the business. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Peter. So Priya, very quickly as we close off, and we mentioned earlier on about, and thank you everyone for sharing your comments and your questions. We talked earlier on about how this is the first too many sessions that we're going to have this month for Entrepreneurship Month. The next session will be happening next week at the same time. The link will be put in the chat box now for you to click and register. But just quickly, we talked a little bit about the objectives of the Entrepreneurship Community of Practice. And I guess it would be interesting to hear from you how you feel, very quickly, how you feel the Entrepreneurship Community of Practice would contribute to Botho University's entrepreneurship development.
I think exactly what's happened today. I mean, there are going to be, arising out of today, we've heard so many stories, so many experiences, so many ideas. And I think what we look at from Botho University, okay, we've outlined what we are doing as a university, and we've heard from other universities what they're doing. And I think this is precisely what we look at to get from the community of practice. I mean, share, we look to benchmark with others and learn from others as to what are the pain points, what are the success stories, what can we take. We're looking for getting mentorship from those who've done better, those who are doing better, we can learn from them. So we're looking for the mentorship, training, funding for our entrepreneurial activities and plans. I mean, many of us in many of the universities, including us, I mean, sometimes we are stuck for want of funding. So maybe as a collaborative, what is it that we can do in order to help all the universities tap into funding in terms of enhancing their entrepreneurial activities? And then basically provide that collaborative ecosystem and even give an opportunity for the entrepreneurs to even network within the ecosystem, because that's where you will build the entrepreneurs. So an entrepreneur sitting in Botswana, if they can talk to somebody in Ghana, and we create that network for them, that can help them and develop their network and develop their business. So these are some of the areas that we are looking at as Botho universities, and we're really excited about this community of practice and looking forward to the sessions and also the learning that we are going to get from it. Thank you so much, George.
Thank you so much, Priya. I've learned a lot today. We talked a little bit, we talked very deeply about partnerships, externally, internally, with government, with private sector. We talked deeply also about how to drive content and teaching experientially. But one question that continued to linger on was how we measure attitude and how we measure success when we talk about entrepreneurial mindsets. So hopefully we continue to discuss it. And like you rightly said, it's the first too many conversations. And we hope that you can all engage with our sessions and within the community of practice as well to help us think through all of these questions that continuously come up about entrepreneurship and the ecosystem for entrepreneurship. With that said, we'll be dropping the link for next week's session in there. Priya, I want to thank you so much for making the time to join us and to lead this session, first of its session for the month. But just before we move into announcements, I would just ask you if you are able to turn on your cameras for a couple of seconds while our comms team takes screenshots of us as our first session for the Community of Practice launch, as well as the Entrepreneurship Month. So we'll take a couple of screenshots really quickly. So take your time, turn on your cameras, and then we can take these screenshots, and then we'll drop a couple of announcements for everyone who has attended. Roland, I hope you're ready.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So we're going to have a quick countdown. If you could, for just a second or two, have your cameras on. Okay, so we're waiting for a few more people. All right. So we're going to have 3 tries at this so we can capture almost everyone. So I'm going to start the first countdown. 3, 2, 1.
All right, thank you. So first announcement is we have dropped the link to register for next week's session, very similar to this as well, part of the Entrepreneurship Month series. The second announcement is June convening is happening from June 13 to June 16. We will share the link with everyone who has registered, and you will see it also in the chat box for you to register for the June convening as well. We have a quick announcement as well. We talked a little bit about our focus areas. So how we want to drive collaborative and innovative education through careers, entrepreneurship, very importantly. We are running a survey to collect data. So please, I would call on Senna, who's leading our ecosystem development project, to talk a little bit about what we are doing to capture data and how we would like to engage with you to drive that. Senna, those are.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you very much, George. So this project is basically looking at driving active entrepreneurship ecosystem across the continent. And so we are looking at coming up with a playbook, an e-playbook that will help each institution to first diagnose their entrepreneurship ecosystem, look on this based on their diagnosis, get recommendations for interventions that they can implement. So it could be in the area of teaching, it could be research, it could be measurement, it could be anything based on what their aspirations are. And then finally, we are going to as well have a mentoring program as part of this, so that if an institution is not able to execute the intervention by themselves, there'll be mentors available who will support them to do this. Everything should come together at a point next year. At the convening this year in June, and George, I'm committing myself, we are going to be piloting the tool. Fingers crossed, we are going to be piloting at the convening. But to get us ready, we need to arrive at certain benchmarks. And so we need experts in the space who are, and this research is not focusing on the larger entrepreneurship ecosystem, but the entrepreneurship ecosystem within the higher educational institution. And so we need actors and experts who have been working within the higher educational institutions entrepreneurship ecosystem to help us to do 2 things. The first survey that is going to come out will be for us to be able to rank certain indicators that we have identified as essential for an active entrepreneurship ecosystem. So from your perspective, how important are these indicators so that we can feed this into the diagnostic tool? And so we need respondents, volunteers to respond to this instrument for us. It takes roughly 45 minutes to complete, so it's quite long. It's on SurveyMonkey, so it can save and then you can continue later. But basically, we need you to commit the 45 minutes to complete it and then rank it for us. Now, once we have the ranking, then we'll put together a committee of experts, just about 10 people, to have a series of meetings to help us determine ratings so that if we say that a collaborative culture, for example, is essential in an African higher educational institution, and Ashesi is ranked 4 on a scale of 0 to 9, what does that mean? So that rating. So once we have the ranks that are done for these indicators, then we need a committee of experts who will help us develop the ratings. Because we realize a lot of times we follow tools and instruments that are designed for other contexts and not for our context. And so we want to generate this knowledge from amongst us so that we can have a benchmark which will help guide us to develop active entrepreneurship ecosystems for ourselves, for the continent, so that we can all enhance our entrepreneurship ecosystems within our institutions. And so definitely we will reach out to you, and George's office will drive this or would lead us, but we will reach out to you to volunteer to complete the survey for us. And if you'd want to be a part of the committee of experts as well, because we don't know everyone, but if you know someone who has been in the space for quite some time, and so will be good at helping us develop the ratings, it will be good to pass the recommendations also to the Education Collaborative tool. And if you want to read about the project, we have a few things up on the website, but in this month of March, we'll have a report coming up, and then we'll have a few other pieces coming up as well. And so if you want to read a bit more about the project, I've put a link in the chat. You can check out the project, and every time we post new information, we'll let you know. We have a few pieces that are coming out this month, very exciting pieces that are coming out this month. So please do volunteer to support us. And thank you very much, George, for the opportunity to appeal.
You're welcome, Senna. Thank you so much for that announcement. Just as a quick one, again, before we leave, and my apologies for keeping you for 8 minutes above your time, is we are sharing an evaluation link in the chat box. Drop it yet again. We will follow up with an email for all of you who have registered, so you can take a look at it. But if you are on here, you can copy it and start giving us feedback on how the session went or how we can improve it. Please don't forget to register for next week's session. We would also reach out to you to volunteer, be part of our data capturing drive. And also don't forget to register for the June convening that's happening from June 13th to June 16th. And we look forward to having you in Accra. Thank you once again, Priya, for joining us and for gracing us with your presence. And thank you all for joining. We wish you the best of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.